This is the sixth lecture of time dependent perturbation theory, and we will talk about one more approximation, which is this adiabatic approximation method. And earlier we had done one of these extreme cases where the Hamiltonian has a part, time dependent part, which is changing too quickly such that the system doesn't get time to respond to it. And this time we will do the opposite of that, which means the system is changing too slowly. And we earlier stated that briefly when we started this extreme case part, that what might happen in this case, and we stated that the system will follow and will continue to be the eigenstate of this Hamiltonian, and because if it is moving very slowly, although that reasoning was not very solid, it was like okay, that might happen, but actually the reasoning was not so intuitive, just like in the sudden approximation case. And it is indeed true, because it is not really a intuitive idea, it's rather a theorem with a certain condition, and under that condition it works. So we will talk about this now, that what is that condition. Like this is comes as a adiabatic approximation or adiabatic theorem, or under what condition that theorem holds and what condition it doesn't hold, even if it is slow. And we will see that if it is slow enough, then it always holds. And what then again it comes this question that what is what counts as enough, like what is slow enough. Okay, so you will see that. So let's formulate the problem. The problem is you have a Hamiltonian which is changing with time very slowly, and redefine relative to the, again the slowly means the energy scale, the time scale of this problem is the energy splitting delta E and h bar by delta E. So slowly compared to that. So you'll see that there will be one more condition on that, but we'll come to that. So the h lambda, we call it the parameters of the Hamiltonian as h lambda. And so one more comment about this part of the course. So I will tell you about the adiabatic theorem and adiabatic approximation, and I will expect that to be you to understand the basics of that, at least at Griffith level. But then there comes another very interesting thing, is Berry connection or Berry curvature. So I am going to cut off on that a little bit, because that will go a little far, and it is a deep topic which leads to something called topological phases in quantum mechanics. And that I will just begin the discussion towards that, and since we are running a little late, that will not be a part of the syllabus. So I will tell you exactly till what point will be the, for example, till this point, that this is this geometric phase, till this point, let's say page 92 is part of the syllabus. After that is just some extra discussion. Okay, so let me start on this. So h lambda is a Hamiltonian which is dependent on a parameter lambda which is changing with time. So assume for simplicity we will assume it's a discrete spectrum, and it is don't need to do much about it. It can be a system like particle in a box which has a discrete spectrum, we know that. So then the solution of this problem for a given instant with a parameter lambda, the eigensolution of this Hamiltonian problem is h lambda, as eigenstate is n lambda, en lambda, n lambda, and lambda is a function of t, that is lambda t, which is changing with time, the parameter, and that is we want to ask, if it is slowly changing, what will happen to this problem. So the adiabatic theorem tells you if lambda is changed slowly, it the system will cling to the energy eigenstate n lambda t for the h lambda at that instant always that we started off. It sounds vaguely true, but not necessarily entirely true, and it turns out that it is not so easy to prove. So here we will try to see what is the proof of that, and what is the, when does that proof doesn't hold. So let's start with the time dependent Schrodinger equation. That is basically this equation for Hamiltonian at time t, and the solution is given by psi t amt e to the power IgMT m lambda t. There is no mystery in this solution. This EMT is the eigen energies of that Hamiltonian at that instant of time. The only need a little change is that the AM is also function of t, because everything is changing, because there is a parameter, everything is dependent on that parameter, everything is changing with time. So that is why for generality we wrote down everything as a function of t, and we will find out what kind of function of t is that. So that is in a normal static problem, this part is constant. Okay, so what is this zeta mt? This zeta mt is basically the eigen solution, at assuming that the eigen solution, the system doesn't change too much in a very short tiny time interval dt prime. That's why I am able to write this emt prime dt prime. So that is an integral over that quantity. So this is the instantaneous energy eigenstate, and it's the usual energy dependent phase factor which you get for the time evolution of a state. So this is the ansatz. So at every instant the system has a complete set of states, which is this, and the ansatz is the writing down the eigen solution in terms of that complex set of state with this coefficient. Okay, now let's plug in this ansatz into the Schrodinger equation in equation 43, and if I take this and take derivative of this time term and expand this, I will get this equation: am dot e to the power I zeta m m lambda plus am e to the power I zeta m derivative of m lambda lambda I dot. You get the last term by applying chain rule. Okay, now it turns out that so there are other terms which are cancelled, which are dependent on n. So just do this one line of algebra and we'll see that. And then there is, you can also write it in terms of this Einstein convention which I wrote down here, where you don't need to repeat this I index. If you just write grad I, it implies that these repeated indices are there. So now I want to find the main unknown quantity here is this AMT, right? So I want to find this. So for that I have to sandwich both sides with n lambda t at that instant, and if I do that by applying this orthogonality property, this equation becomes this. So an drops out when am delta mn is there. So and this n will contribute this matrix element we have to calculate, which is between n and m lambda. Okay, and here we are singling out the terms, separating the term where m is equal to n and m is not equal to m. These two are two significantly different terms. So the first term is this, just ai lambda lambda I dot, and second term is this matrix element. Okay, so because this term will drop out just because of these factors are all dropping out. Okay, now the main term is this ai lambda. So I call it ai lambda, which is this this thing sandwiched between the same n, and this is the lambda matrix element of that between two different states m and n. So this quantity is called Berry connection. So why it is called a connection, that is a little deep. It has to do with some geometric property, but let's just know that this term is called Berry connection. So Berry was the first person to appreciate the importance of that in 1983, but there is a little bit of backstory into that. So this is not this kind of terms are not unique to quantum mechanics. These kind of terms are also found in optics, like linear optics, where you have this there are a lot of correlation between quantum mechanics and optics, because both are in some sense some wave phenomena, except one is for particle and another is for light or truly waves. So this term actually was first found in the context of optics in 1950s, I think, by Pancharatnam, who was a faculty at RRI at that point of time, and it was not that popular, not that well recognized. And when Michael Berry, who was a British guy, when he did that, of course, when something is done by some Western person, an Oriental person, the Western person gets the credit. So he is even after much long after, so people called it Berry phase. In quantum mechanics context, that was Berry phase indeed, but this kind of phases arising in physics was found first by Pancharatnam. So we can at least rectify this in our time and call it Pancharatnam Berry phase. So that is what I will call it later when I will talk about the phase. Okay. but it is just a habit because we see it in all textbooks, so we keep calling it very and all that, very connection, very phase, um, very gauge potential and all those names we keep giving it. Anyways, so let's take a derivative of the 43 equation 43 and try to work out the second term. The reason this is the first term we worked out, and now we are going to work out the second term. So equation 43 is the Schrodinger equation. The time dependent Schrodinger equation, and we take the when we take the derivative with respect to lambda, and then take the inner product with respect to lambda, we can write down this matrix element of this derivative term in this form, which is a much more manageable form, and it is a familiar form to us. It is basically boils down to calculating the rate of change of the Hamiltonian with respect to the change in the parameter lambda I, and that is multiplied by the time rate of change of the lambda I divided by the energy difference between the original Hamiltonian. Now, in order adiabatic theorem to hold, okay, so this lambda I dot has to be much smaller, because I want this term to be not so important. I want this term to drop out. Only then you can say that system continues to be the eigenstate of the Hamiltonian of that instant. Okay, so if I look at this term, I want this term to drop out. So I will see in a moment why. So for that, the lambda I dot must be much smaller than em minus en. That means I am telling you that this rate of change, the speed of change of lambda I, must be much smaller than the energy gap. This is a similar condition like applicability of perturbation theory, a similar smallness condition. So when that is true, we call it the adiabatic limit. Then this equation is just this. Then this phase is just this, and this phase has no this has no complication. The only time dependence is in this term and this term, so we can integrate this and we get this. So we integrate this equation and we get this. So now the full solution is of this form. It has a zeta m term, which is like the energy term, energy oscillation, a gamma term, which is basically this this connection term, and that's it. And when this is true, then you can see the system at that instant can be written as a superposition of the states of eigenstates at that instant, and that is why you said the system continues to be in that eigenstate. Okay. So equation 46 basically proves the adiabatic theorem, and it tells you and that you can see very clearly that if I start with a specific eigenstate, the adiabatic theorem tells you if you start with an eigenstate of the Hamiltonian at time t equal to 0, if you change the Hamiltonian very slowly, the system will continue to be in the eigenstate with that eigenstate. Like if it is the ground state, it will continue to be the ground state. If it is excited state, it will continue to be that particular excited state of the new system, which is changing with time, if it is changed slowly enough. How slow is slow enough? That this rate of change of this must be much smaller than the energy gap of the original system or the system at a previous instant. And then if that is true, then this solution is of this form. And how do I see from here that it is the adiabatic theorem is holding? For that I have to put the am, the an I have derived. We have to put the m to be at delta mn, which means an particular eigenstate at a time instant n, and then we have to just plug in this formula, and then we will see that this will indeed be the eigenstate of the new Hamiltonian at the new time t. Okay, so now, well, there is one catch here. So it will continue to be this delta nm, but or this particular delta nm, but with a multiplicative factor, and we will see how this multiplicative factor plays a role. So that means the system will continue to be in that state, but it will have an extra phase e to the power I gamma n, because of the fact that it is changing slowly with time. But we know that extra phase doesn't matter, because it's just a phase factor. It doesn't matter in some sense, but it can matter if you do an Arnold-Bohm time experiment where the phase is getting detected. So that's what we will see. So this adiabatic theorem holds when the lambda is lambda derivative is much smaller than delta E by h bar. And again we have to be careful about level crossing, because if the system is because of changing Hamiltonian, in principle it can happen that the first state and second state crisscross each other. So then in that case this system doesn't continue to be the same state of the time of the Hamiltonian, which is changing with time. So then that is a problem. But we know that level crossings are very rare in quantum mechanics, and the reason is, in order to do a level crossing you have to have a symmetry. There is some degeneracy at some point, symmetry because of time variance, and that is a rare phenomena, not impossible. It can happen, and that rare phenomena are actually some subject matter of some very recent works, and it requires some fine tuning, and but I am not going into that direction. So this is just an example I tried to give. Think of a generic two-level system. You can look at what you need exactly for that level crossing to happen, and you will see that condition is very particular, and you won't easily find such a system to do that. Okay, now as I said, we want to talk about this phase part, which is this Pancharatnam-Berry phase, and it was like a 30-year gap, yet the credit is to Berry. It's not like that 1 and 2 year gap. Okay, so this phase factor we got in this problem, this n lambda has a phase factor which is e to the power I gamma nt and zeta mt. Zeta mt is this normal factor, but this gamma came because of this time changing, this part of the system which is changing with time. This lambda I dot is there, and then there is this term ai, which is a rate factor kind of thing. So ai is basically this quantity, which is a rate of change in the Hamiltonian. So let's understand this point. Why am I calling it a geometric phase and all that? So let's say we want to ask this question: what happened to these two phases if we vary the parameters lambda with time, but in a way that it finally come back to where it started? So it's like a trace out a closed path C in the parameter space. So this gamma term in that case can be written as this, as a closed integral like that, and this, notice that this only depends on the path in the parametric space. It doesn't depend on time anymore. This is not like the energy dependent phase. The energy dependent phase will continue to be like that, but it will be some e to the power I nt factor always. But this one, if you pursue a closed path, it will become this, okay, e to the power I gamma nt, this particular term. So now what does that mean about this term? What does it make about this term? So it depends only on the geometry of the path. So it turns out it plays an important role in many interesting physical systems, such as quantum Hall system, quantum spin chains, and topological insulators and all that, and it links the subtle underlying topological character of the physical problem to this to a phase, a geometric phase of the states, which can be detected in experiments. So that is the important thing about that, but these are very modern experiments. So notice that the structure of this is a familiar object, this Berry connection, or again we should call it Pancharatnam-Berry connection. So this is not a not an entirely unfamiliar object, because it is similar to these gauge potentials in electrodynamics. And to see that connection, let's recap what we learned earlier in this course, that in a generalized 4-vector language, this electrodynamic gauge potential. So what is this gauge potential does? It gives a redundancy in the description of your physics problem, and the statement is all physics must remain invariant under a gauge transformation. So that is what it is. And with respect to, and that is a transformation like that, which leaves everything else invariant. And if we want to extract physical information, which is basically the field strength and all that, we can get it from the gauge potential by this f mu nu, which is a covariant derivative of this nu. Now compare this with the Berry connection, and in this problem the role of the Minkowski spacetime, the x01 x0, x1, x2, x3 is taken by the parameters, and there can be arbitrary number of parameters in the system. So this, let me call them lambda I, some d-dimensional parameter space. And the redundancy in Berry connection comes from the arbitrary choice we made in fixing the phase of the reference state. So it is like the gauge fixing, just like you do in electrodynamics, like Coulomb gauge, Lorentz gauge and all that. So there is a nice way to state this thing in a language of differential geometry. You can write this, call these AI lambdas as a one form of space if you know the language of differential geometry. So just like MUX is a one form of Minkowski space, and these gauge theories can be understood, this gauge field, as a fiber bundle in that space. So actually this is very neat. If you use this language of differential geometry, the entire Maxwell equation can be written in these two lines, df equal to 0, d star f equal to 0, but for that you have to understand the meaning of the star product in the language of differential geometry. So note that we could have also happily chosen a different reference state, different set of reference frame, which is defined by a phase, and that local transformation will show up in this as a phase factor. So this Berry connection is basically similar to the gauge connection in the sense that I can write it in this form. When I use this arbitrary different choice of the original reference state, then this Berry connection pick up a del omega del lambda type of term, just like the gauge potential, where it is del mu omega, where mu is the space time, here instead of space time you have the parameters. So basically it is similar to the statement that a gauge theory comes because it tells you the physical phenomena should not dependent on how you fix your reference, how you fix your coordinate system. So that could, for example, if I have a coordinate system like that, I have a distorted coordinate system like that, what I observe, the physical theory, the physical measurables should not depend on how I am defining my coordinate system. So actually this relation also can be understood to frame Einstein's theory of general relativity as a gauge theory, and ED, and also can be understood, of course we know that how to do that for ED, and this is also like a gauge theory in that sense. Okay, so following the analogy with ED, we will expect that a physical information in the Berry connection can be found in the gauge invariant field state. So we can define an analogous quantity called Berry curvature. Why you call it curvature? Because again that requires a little bit of curve space geometry. There these things are called a curvature is calculated like that, in like a quantity like that, which is similar to the field quantities in electrodynamics, which can be calculated like that. So that contains also some physical information about our quantum system, just like this electrodynamic F mu nu contains physical information about the system, the electric field and magnetic field, similar to here. What is that symmetry? What is that information? What is that thing, your physical property you are learning by doing that for a particular problem? That requires that depends on the problem. So therefore that you have to solve some particular example, and I will not do that here, but maybe at some point of time I will do it later, or out of syllabus, as a out of syllabus topic. So in the present context, it is important to compute is this Berry phase, which must be invariant with respect to this gauge transformation, just like our usual gauge transformation. So this thing in a closed path, this part must vanish, and it is just as a information know that this thing physically gets manifested as a Arnold-Bohm phase. So if you have a magnetic field and charge particle, you can show that this thing is a consequence of the geometric phase factor. And again for that quantity also we can write down this Berry phase in terms of this curvature term, where this lambda I, notice this everything is in parametric space, this lambda is a line in the parametric space where there is a surface in the parametric space, and this thing can be physically interpreted within the same framework. So there is an example where I wanted to calculate that, but I will skip that for now. And as I said, this extra part is not in syllabus. What is in syllabus is up to this, is knowing that this thing can be written as this phase can be written as for a closed path in this form, and yeah, and this is basically this term, and that is where our this connection between this understanding this Berry phase as a gauge theory, that part is not in the syllabus. Okay, that's all.